DW Africa Link.
Ghanaians are frustrated that the same thing happens over and over again, and this year is no exception. Heavy rainfall has led to widespread flooding, causing loss of lives, damaged homes and businesses, power cuts, and disrupted transport. So why does flooding keep returning, and what does it mean for the people living through it? That's what's coming up. I am Eddy Micah Jr., and you are welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
What began as heavy rain has turned into tragedy. At least a dozen people have lost their lives, hundreds have been rescued, and once again, Ghana's capital, Accra, is grappling with devastating floods. President Mahama says around 140 millimeters of rain fell in a single day. That's more than double last year's peak rainfall and has linked the extreme weather to climate change. But was this disaster unavoidable, or could much of the damage have been prevented? For more on this, let's bring in Abudulai Mahama, roads and building consultant, and DW correspondent Adwoa Domena in Accra, Ghana. Hello, both of you. Welcome to Africa Link. Adwoa, look, flooding during the rainy season is unfortunately nothing new for Ghana, but this disaster appears to have hit particularly hard. What stands out this year?
Well, so Eddie, we have heard from the Meteo Agency. We have also heard from the president. And so let's begin with the facts available. The Meteo Agency, for instance, said that the rains we had on Monday was one of the highest month on month in several years that, has been recorded. So it says that about 140 millimeters of rain fell. A little reading tells me that that 140 millimeters of rain, amount to about 140 liters of water. So basically, you can picture 37 to 38 gallons of water being poured on a specific area at the same time. So to put it mildly, you can say this is torrential rain, but it was more than that. This figure, we also understand, is 3 times higher than the amount of rain we have witnessed on a single day. So the Interior Minister has also been to Parliament, and he said that in this month of June, it was quite different, because if you compare June to other months that we have seen rain since, rainfall patterns began around June, July, this month the rains has been very heavy. And so that is the data side. But in terms of the disaster, Eddie, we all know that the scale of the tragedy of the June 3rd, 2015 disaster, remains the darkest day when we are talking about casualties involved. In that incident, over 150 people lost their lives. Of course, you can't classify any disaster as little. The rains that fell on Monday, we've heard reports about 12 people dying. Close to about 500 people have been displaced. The Ghana National Fire Service is still counting, but we are still yet to see the full extent of the impact of this rain. So yes, it was different in terms of the volume of rains that fell. But in terms of the disaster, or in terms of the impact, we've seen worse days in Accra.
But there are those that are, while acknowledging that it rained a lot, are also pointing to different factors. And this is where I'm going to bring you in, Abudulai. What were, in your opinion, some of the main factors that turned this week's heavy rainfall into such a devastating flood disaster?
I think the first has to be the torrential rains. On records, the GMET told us that they recorded, I think, slightly higher than what Adwoa was saying. It's about 167 milliliters of water. And the Interior Minister's information that was channeled I think this is the highest in 31 years. And so we were receiving floodwaters that were more or less beyond anticipated. And to cap it, for the previous weeks, because there were this intermittent rain, the grounds were already saturated. And when there's that intensity of water, is not able to be absorbed on the grounds directly. So you have these flash floods running across the communities that we witnessed on Monday. It's sad to note that whereas in 1995, when these floods came, the population within Accra probably would have been maybe 30% less. And unfortunately, much as we have developed our lands to cover a greater portion of where we would have anticipated a lot of infiltration or seepage into the soil, we didn't address or we didn't acknowledge the fact that the built environment would come back if we do not give the needed respect that it deserves to help this percolation or infiltration of the water into the soil. So there has been a massive expansion with little regard to the environment, and that has been the bane of our problem over the years.
That's a very interesting point you're raising over there. So on the one hand, we acknowledge the impact of climate change and all of this because, as President Mahama said, this quite unprecedented heavy rainfall. But then you're also pointing to man-made factors like the way buildings are set up and overpopulation and all. How about a bit more on that and why this disaster could have been avoided in one way or another?
Mountainous areas within the capital, the capital is surrounded by 3 mountainous areas to the east, to the north, and to the west. The south that's the ocean. But we've seen massive encroachment on the 3 mountainous areas and the valleys underneath the mountains to the east, to the north, and to the south, and to the west has also been taken over by developers with total disregard to anticipated runoff from these areas. And so if you've already encroached the vegetation areas on the mountain, and that means that the speed at which the floodwaters will come to the base is with a certain light, and you don't accommodate or allow valleys to accommodate the water that is running from the mountain areas, then obviously you'll be having such disasters when the rains come. The other information that we have is that all the wetlands in the capital have been taken over by developers. In the 2021 Auditor General's report, it stated that there was supposed to be 18 retention ponds within the capital. And I want you to know the retention ponds are supposed to help to intercept all the flood water that run across the high areas to the lower elevations. Now, if those retention ponds have not been constructed, that is one of the expectations that will happen in terms of the devastation. One other typical example is when government has decided to do a lot of expansion of the storm drains. Now, the storm drains are being constructed, which means that, let's say, for example, if the storm drains are supposed to at least accommodate or contain 10 million liters of water, that will take a reasonable time to enter it or discharge into the sea. At the same time, the 10 million liters of water would have been augmented by the existing retention areas. Now, these retention areas have not been developed. And so what it means is that even when the government expands on the storm drains, the other feature that was supposed to augment that intention is not where to be found. And then lastly, when you're having these storm waters to be discharged into the sea, there's a transition point. And this transition point is the mangrove that is between the lands and then the sea. And these are areas where we have seen massive encroachment of developers putting up high-rise and huge factories and warehouses, obviously to intercept, to prevent the water from moving into the sea. And that's one of the things that government have to relook and then undertake some massive demolitions of such blocks that are hindering the smooth passage of this water discharging into the ocean.
Right. I think I've been following you, and you've really highlighted some of the things I keep hearing. It's about wrong places for people to build. Basically buildings intercepting waterways, natural waterways, and of course, all this is going to contribute to flooding. And I just remember hearing it for so many years, Adwoa, and it's still the same story. Also, one of the main stories is pollution, right? We're talking about plastic waste and other types of waste just being thrown in gutters and, other water bodies. And that's also what we're hearing. Adwoa is also contributing to this, isn't it?
Absolutely, Eddie. You can't be more right. So one of the major conversations that has been happening across the country is human behavior and how it looks like, yes, on the authority side, there may be one or two interventions that have been put in place to mitigate flooding. Maybe they are not yielding the results we're looking for, but in terms of human behavior, we have also largely contributed to what we are seeing. We can talk about, the drains. We can talk about pouring trash when it is raining. I have been to a few wetlands. I have done stories around areas that are supposed to be reserved, for not to be built on, but you find large volumes, large amounts of waste that have been, left there unattended. We've also heard stories about how some developers strategically filled certain areas that are demarcated as wetlands. They fill them with waste so that over time it becomes solid enough that you can go there, observe the land and be able to buy it without necessarily suspecting that this could cause flooding when it rains. And we see the impact of those. We have also had issues about encroachment, and I think Engineer Mahama was talking about a few of those. For instance, when you look at an area like Kaneshi, which is a commercial area, high density commercial area, you find people putting up structures in along drainage areas. So where they're not supposed to build, you see people building.
Right. And Adwoa, also what's frustrating, the Ghana Meteorological Service, right? They should know that it's going to rain heavy. They should have an idea of how much rain to expect. And for the authorities, they should know that, okay, if it's going to be another heavy rain this year, record levels of rain, then we should already alert people, maybe get people out of areas that
complicated. And so for planning purposes, if you say that we're going to have heavy rain, it could be just a torrential rain, which, have happened in the past month, at least.
Which have also led to flooding and lives being lost. So heavy rain or not, rains were expected, but there was no, it seems at least that there was no preparation for what it could cause to lives.
Yes, you are very right. I think one of the challenges is that we mostly do not hear the major advertisements when it comes to rain. Because, Eddie, we know in Ghana that we have two big seasons, the rainy season and the dry season. When the rains come, from late May through to July, we know that the rains come and cause havoc in its wake. And so there has to be some preparation that is done. But in terms of, advertising about the rains, you hear some residents say, we did not know that it was going to rain, because not everybody listens to the news. Not everybody, watches the news. So maybe people have suggested that we make use of community information centers, advertise maybe weeks before the government can also start relocating people. That also costs money a lot. The government can also, improve upon certain projects. We have a project called the Greater Accra Resilience Project, the Garrett Project. It was a World Bank, facility launched somewhere in 2019 after the flood and fire disaster in 2015. It was supposed to end next year, 2027. Millions of dollars have been pumped into that project. But till today, we are still talking about flooding. We are still talking about people dying, properties being lost. Eddie, if you talk about the properties, at least even from what the people we have spoken to, the people who have come to openly share on social media, how much they have lost, it is so devastating that we think that, at least from what we have seen, there should have been more preparation going ahead of the rainy season to prepare the entire country, if not Accra, for the flooding.
And so it continues every single year. we talk about the same thing. Preparation was not made. People living across water areas, illegal building structures erupting in places that it should not, and how people got the permits is also a whole new discussion to be had. But also there's been talk about the drainage and stormwater systems, Abudulai, right? I don't know what you make of those. Are they designed to handle the volume of rainfall the city is now receiving? I mean, it clearly seems like it's not.
Well, so with my experience in the road sector, and when it comes to drainages and culverts and storm drains in all those categories, the design is done such that all the topography along our batting the roads are factored. The designs are done with information from Hydro Department or the Hydrological Authority, and then the GMET information, that is history of the particular terrain before maybe 10 years ago, and then they pick all this, and the designs are mostly done in 25, 50 years design. What it means is that it is anticipated that within 25 years or 50 years, a certain volume of water is supposed to be received. With my field, where I've actually been active in doing construction, all these determinants are factored before the size of drains are considered or done. And when these designs are completed, they are given to the client representative for them to also peruse and ascertain that the details are matching those 25, 50 years design before they are allowed.
I think you make very valid points to complement the earlier points that Adwoa made. And it's really factors like these, isn't it? And then I like the way you put a lot of the responsibility at the doorstep of government, because this has been happening for far too long and it doesn't seem like much change is happening. I'm going to come to you to wrap it up eventually, Abudulai, on what to expect to help deal with these challenges. But Adwoa, I do understand that the Ghana Meteorological Service is expecting even more rains to come, which could continue with the flooding. Are you seeing any measures being put in place to help protect lives and properties?
Well, in terms of measures put in place, we do not know exactly the component of some funding that has been released by the government. So government announced a 300 million package. Now, half of that package, this is about 23 million euros. Half of that package, we understand, is supposed to go into emergency relief for the victims. But the other half, we are also understanding that will go into flood mitigation projects, which exactly we don't know yet. As the days unfold, we will begin to learn. But yes, you are correct. The Meteo has warned that over this coming weekend, we're going to experience some more rains. And so we should brace ourselves for it.
All right. Thank you very much, Adwoa, for that. Final words for you, Abudulai. In 30 seconds, what do you believe the government should do now to prevent the next disaster?
Well, all the identified areas of the wetland that have buildings on them, government has to intensify the demolition of such structures. Some monies may be allocated for people who legitimately acquired or got permit from the assemblies so that there will be adequate compensation for those that will be demolished because they have permits and documentations. The social media must be used by the GeoMet so that it's much more faster in terms of how Ghanaians are embracing social media than to always rely on the national televisions for such announcement. And then the drip machine that had been allocated to each assembly must be put into full use so that we can have some of these isolated floods within the communities being drastically reduced.
Right. Are you optimistic that this will be done? Because that's always the situation, isn't it? We know the challenges, we know the problems, but implementation, getting it done is the challenge. Do you sense anything different this time?
I think that due to the extent of devastation and the fact that it's like almost every pocket of the capital receives such devastation. I think there might be some change, and social media is also doing a lot now. Let's see how people will be conscientized based on how we get this information. And some of us who are into the built environment would have to also up our game, even though we know we've done to the limit, but we'll have to sustain the advocacy and see how best we can get some of these things addressed.
Thank you very much for that. I really do hope that we do not come again next year to talk about flooding that has claimed lives, and that there will be clear steps taken by the government and authorities to make sure that the next rainy season will not claim lives. Many thanks to you guys for your insights. Abudulai Mahama, Roads and Building Consultant, and DW correspondent Adwoa Domena. Thanks to you both.
Thank you, Eddy.
Welcome.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
Many are still dealing with the impact of the recent flooding, and with more rains expected, Ghanaians are left frustrated as their lives are turned upside down.
It used to flood, but the water will stay for about an hour or two and it will go away. Yeah. But it seems like since all this construction started in the buffer zones, it just keep getting worse and worse and worse until what we had yesterday.
People are still building waterways.
They shouldn't be. I don't think it's the Assembly's fault for them to do it, but they should take charge and make sure nothing goes up if they don't have a permit.
But what do you expect government to do in this regard?
The government? We know the problem is part of the bridge. We also know that the exit way to the ocean, which is the beach road, is part of the problem. They should just create a more access way for the water to flow through. I think that will solve most of our problems.
The situation is very, very bad. This is the second time, and my brother-in-law called me and said, the situation right now, and I have to come down and see what we have to do about it. So I came down on Friday, and Sunday it started raining.
But which country did you come from?
US. So all these things there in the garage, the water start coming in to the kitchen, to the living room, to all the rooms at the back, it full up to my waist.
Ooh.
So I have to run and climb upstairs. So I was locked there in the upstairs for almost 3 days now, because I have everything there that I can take a shower, I can survive it. So once a while I have to come to the kitchen and take some food, microwave, everything, fridge and the deep freezer, everything is down.
So how are you going to survive? How are you going to start all over again? Because you've lost a lot. I can see you're pulling your car out.
So far as I'm alive, I will try my best.
And so people are still building waterways. So whatever the actions are, is what affecting people who built legally.
When you try to stop them, people higher level, they'll go and report it. They'll come and see it.
I've lived in this house since 2007. I've lived in London for 52 years. I'm retired. I'm 78 years of age now. Oh. I retired, build my house, come and live here comfortably until I die. I've lived through June, July 20 times. I've never seen this flooding. Until 2 years ago, people started coming at the back, putting structures there. And you can see some buildings on the left-hand side. They were not there. In 2008, 2010, 2015, 2019, it was not there. They just sprang up just 2 years ago, and that's the consequence of what you're seeing now. And the question is, who gave them the permit to erect those structures? We want to see some document, paperwork. We want to say, not just by mouth, I want to see the paper. That has cost me all this, cost me so much money. That is the problem. And if there is an assembly who has the oversight responsibility to make sure things like that do not happen, but it's happening under their nose.
What I think government should do, first of all, they have to bring down all the illegal buildings around. They are blocking the waterway to go. And then secondly, the bridge.
From Accra to Abidjan to Lagos, the story is becoming painfully familiar. Heavier rains, flooded streets, lives lost, and the same questions left unanswered. Climate change may be intensifying the storms, but poor planning, blocked drains, and weak infrastructure are turning them into disasters. The rainy season isn't over yet, and unless something changes, many fear this won't be the last time we tell this story. Share your thoughts on Facebook at DW Africa. Listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Kaleji, And I am Eddy Micah Jr. Thanks for listening.
DW. Made for mind.